us too at another Sunday school lesson, and I'm excited to get to teach you guys today, to give away another gift card through the keywords. We do have a winner from this last week, and that was Armin Kaichinian, and so we'll give him his prize from this week. I hope that more of you will send us the keywords that I give today so that you can be entered for the drawing. We also have a new contest starting up. Okay, there's 4 things that you can do for the contest. You can answer the questions on your Sunday school lesson. You can memorize the verse that's there, read the verses that are given from the Bible, and then also you can watch the videos from the church that are put out. So those are how you can enter the competition, and we will be giving a large prize away here in a couple weeks. But let's get started on our lesson today. Make sure you'll pay attention and get the key words. The lesson is kind of an overview of the life of Abraham. And we've talked about him the last few weeks, so we're going to talk about his life and how God led him throughout his life. All of you guys have been driving, well, not driving, but riding through the city, and you've seen traffic lights. Maybe you've been riding your bike and you've stopped at a traffic light. Obviously, we know what the traffic lights mean. We know that green means go, yellow means slow down, and red means to stop. And let's just imagine for a moment today that God gave Abraham a traffic light as he went throughout his life. God would tell him when to stop, when to go, when to slow down, when to stay at certain places, or when to move. And let's imagine that as we look at Abraham's life today. And at the beginning of our story, Abraham was actually called Abram. And he was born to a dad named Terah. And his dad's name was Terah. And God had a good relationship with Terah, and Terah had a good relationship with God. And God would give Terah directions. And he would tell him, hey, you need to go here. And it was like he was showing him that green light, hey, move here. And he told him, he said, hey, I want you to move with your family to Canaan, and the country of Canaan. And so Terah packed up his stuff, and he moved, but he didn't go quite to Canaan. And he stopped. He stopped short of what he was supposed to do. So anyway, so they lived there in the land of Ur, so he had to, he would live there with his family. And Abram, when he was grown, both of his parents passed away, and God came back to Abram and he said, hey, I want you to move with you and your family, just you and your family, your immediate family. I want you to move to Canaan. Once again, telling them, hey, here's the green light. I want you to go. And so that's what Abraham did. He packed up all of his belongings. He was a wealthy man, had many things. And he packed up his things and started to move. The only problem is that he brought more than just his immediate family and the men that worked for him. He brought his nephew, Lot, with him, even though God told him not to. And it was almost like God was showing him the yellow light. Hey, slow down. Don't do that. I didn't tell you to. But he did it anyway. And it led to a lot of problems. And if you remember from a couple weeks ago, you can even go back and watch the other video about Lot and what happened with him and his family. And just caused a lot of problems in Abram's life. So anyway, so God gives them the green light, and they head to what is called the Jordan River, and that's our first key word, Jordan, and was just ahead of him. He had to cross that river and go over to the other side, and there were some mountains on the other side, so he had to climb those mountains with his cattle, with his herds, and with his men that worked with him there. And they came to a place called Shechem, and kind of a funny name, and there Abraham wanted to talk with God. And if you remember from back then, the way they did that, the way they worshiped God, was they would build an altar and they would sacrifice animals on it. So that's what he did. He built his altar. He and all of his family and the men that worked with him confessed their sins. They sacrificed animals, and they talked with God there. And God talked to Abram, and he said, Abraham, now you are in the land of Canaan. This is the land where I wanted you to come. I make you a promise that unto you and your children, after you for many, many years, I will give you this land. And Abram was so happy. He was so happy that God made him this promise and that he would be able to live there. So they headed on to go farther into Canaan, the country where God told him to go. But then Abraham kind of veered off the path. And God wanted him to stop, and he almost ran that red light, and he went to another place called Egypt. And God didn't command him to go there. God didn't tell him to go there. But he decided he wanted to go there. There was not a lot of rain where he had been, and for his animals and for his people, he needed water. And so he decided, well, the best place for me to go is to go to Egypt. Even though God wasn't leading him, wasn't showing him that on the traffic light. And then they go on, and God makes Abram a promise, and he tells him, hey, I'm going to give you a son. Because Abram was 100 years old, and Sarai was 90 years old, and they didn't have any children. But God promised. He said, I'm going to give you a son. And even though most of the time that didn't happen for folks that old. And so the next key word is 100 too, if you're paying attention to that 100. They did end up having a son, and they named him Isaac. And we talked about a little story about him last week. And the green light was still on. They were headed there and farther into Canaan. God told them, head farther in and claim the land as your own. And whatever you travel on, that's what I'm going to give to you. So they traveled for miles and miles through desert portions and towns and valleys and mountains. And they traveled. And if you remember from last week, God gave a test to Abraham there. And he sent him to Mount Moriah. And there he was told to sacrifice his son. And if you remember, it was a very hard time for Abraham. And he took his son Isaac up the mountain, and God was giving him that green light, head up toward the mountain, and he did, and he brought his son, and he was about to sacrifice, but right when he was about to sacrifice his son, that red light lit up, and he said, stop, I don't want you to go through with this. I just wanted to test your love. And of course, he passed that test. And so many times in Abraham's life, we see that God told him to go forward, told him to move on, told him to do this or do that. And sometimes God just told him to stop and stay where he was at. And God listened, and Abraham listened, I'm sorry. And but Abraham, he was not perfect. Nobody is. But every time he sinned, when he did sin, he would confess his sin to God. And that's what we need to learn from his life, is that he wasn't perfect, but he sought God first. And that's our verse from this week, Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And that's a good reminder for us, and I hope that many of you will memorize that verse, is that we need to be following God's command, following his traffic lights that he gives us in our lives, and we'll be able to be blessed and helped because of it if we follow what God commands us. But I hope that you learned something today. I hope that you'll text me those key words. Well, I'm so excited to start this contest. I think it will be a lot of fun. We'll have to keep you updated on who's in first and who has the most points for this drawing that we're going to give away. And I'm excited for that. I look forward to seeing you soon. I hope that you'll listen and that you'll obey your parents this week.